Okay. Okay, we're live streaming. Welcome back, my friends, to the committee that never ends. That wouldn't be us. It would be some other committees. In any case, this is Tuesday, March 16th, the day before St. Patrick's Day. I am your friendly chairman, Kumar Barve. I'm joined by Vice Chairman Dana Stein, who will be having to take over for me in a few minutes because I have some appointments that I have to attend to. But regardless, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 local bills. And so we're going to do these, I believe, in numerical order. So let me read them off right now. House Bill 628, Prince George's County Delegation. House Bill 637, the Allegheny and Garrett County delegations. House Bill 639, on behalf of the Tri-County Council of Southern Maryland. House Bill 480, Delegate Otto. House Bill 977, the Prince George's County Delegation. House Bill 980, also the Prince George's County Delegation. House Bill 1010, Prince George's County Delegation. House Bill 1061, the Charles County Delegation. House Bill 1163, Caroline County Delegation. House Bill 1285, the Howard County Delegation. And finally, House Bill 1293, Delegate Ampray on behalf of Baltimore City. And so I will start by recognizing Delegate Valderrama, who is representing the Prince George's County Delegation for House Bill 628. Please proceed.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman Barve and esteemed Vice Chairman Stein and esteemed members of Environment and Transportation. This is maybe only my second or third time in your committee in my 15 years, which I find quite interesting, but I need to come more around. With that said, I just wanted to discuss with the members here a familiar issue that I've brought before your committee several times now, speed and accident control on Route 210, which is a state road which passes through my legislative district in Prince George's County. So twice in the last 4 years, I have sought speed cameras as a way to slow traffic on Route 210. Speed cameras were first installed, as many of the members on this committee know, at one fixed location at one intersection going in one direction, which at the time was the southbound direction. 2 years later, I came before you and asked for several more cameras that would be mobile, that could be moved to different locations. And this was so that these mobile cameras were meant to keep motorists from speeding and then slowing because they knew where the cameras were. Tickets from these cameras were limited to $40 regardless of the motorist's speed. So the state and county, they supplement these speed cameras with handheld police officer run radar units. And so officers are stopping motorists and issuing tickets on a sliding scale depending on the vehicle's speed. Points are also assigned for more serious infractions. These cameras have been successful in slowing some of these drivers. Unfortunately, as the pandemic took hold and fewer drivers were on the road, there were some drivers that started driving at unconscionable speeds. So between January 1st and mid-September of last year, the 3 speed cameras on Route 210 captured 15,000 drivers going faster than 67 miles per hour on a road with a 55 mile per hour speed limit. Over 87% of these drivers were going over 70 miles per hour. 400 of these drivers were going over 100 miles per hour. Damn. Was clocked driving 143 miles per hour, and another was
clocked impressed.
driving 161 miles per hour. So more than 1,000 of these drivers were repeat offenders and not deterred by the $40 fine. So this legislation seeks to address this problem in 2 ways. First, it increases the $40 fine for motorists that drive at higher speeds. This sliding scale is similar to the fines for tickets that are issued by written by police officers. And the second way we address speeding is with a fee for speeders who are caught on speed cameras more than twice in 2 years. These vary from $50 to $350, and these repeat offender fees are in addition to the underlying fee for speeding. Now, if you have not received it in your inbox yet, I had my staffer send in detail the sliding scale because I really don't want to hit all of those right here in testimony. But if you want me to, I'm happy to. And I just wanted to also end by saying that this is not me willy-nilly, Delegate Valderrama, putting this out here. I've been working for years with a group of public servants in the constituency and concerned citizens, and have been meeting with representatives of the county police department, the Maryland SHA, to look for innovative ways to solve the continued speeding issues on this notorious road. And we realize that speed cameras are only a part of the solution. So unfortunately, many of the potential tools to slow speeders and prohibitively expensive. Some are not and will be implemented by the end of the year. So it is my hope that you will allow us to include these fines and fees in our toolbox. And with that, I would urge a favorable report. Thank you.
Okay. Let me recognize Callie Canavan, who is, oh, no, wait, you're signed up in opposition to the bill. I'm not going to recognize you quite yet. I am going to allow the notorious DFH to ask you a question, however.
Oh, that's hilarious. The notorious DFH.
It is what it is. Anyway, Delegate, thank you for bringing this again this year. Can you tell me, because in my subcommittee, we've been doing a lot of speed camera work. In the last, I don't know, 3 to 5 or 7 years, just the number, as I recall, there were some significant fatalities. Or wasn't there an incident of teenagers or doing a speed contest in which multiple people were killed at one event or something like that? Can you refresh the committee's memory?
Yes, and I apologize for not having the exact stats on me now.
Okay.
I regret that. But having said that, for those who aren't familiar with Route 210, it's known as the highway of death, which I don't think anybody wants to have a road of that nature in their district. Having said that, I believe there's several incidences or fatalities, I should say, that all here are familiar with because it was on the news incessantly. And the most, I don't want to say the most recent, but the most, I guess you want to say, well-known was the family. It was a Hispanic family, a Latino family. I apologize. I don't know the exact, but they were with their young babies, twins and a young one, and they were leaving church on 210 and were rear-ended. That's the least way to explain it, but so severely because the gentleman who hit them was intoxicated. And, you know, I'm just trying to make a long story short, but that's just one of those incidences. And then, of course, they're all pretty much the same, the outcome. And so if you would like, for those members who may be new to this committee or on the subcommittee, whichever, I'm happy to provide those stats because I just didn't want to repeat those over again with the testimony I just provided.
I think what's really impactful to the committee and the subcommittee and specifically is when we hear about the number of personal injury accidents and fatalities, because
okay, I will make sure that is sent to the subcommittee in addition to what I with the fines and just to include here, like again, the amount, the fees that we have implemented in this legislation that we seek to address, again, these aren't set in stone. So obviously, you know, the subcommittee will do its work. We're just trying to, again, as I prefaced in my testimony, there are drivers out there who are not deterred by $40 and they will continue to use 210 as Indy, I don't know what that place is called, Indy Speed Highway. Or
the highway of death, straight out of Mad Max.
Yes. So I'm willing to work with the committee, the subcommittee. You know, if you seek there's better ways to solve this problem, I'm happy to work with you.
Okay, thank you very much, Delegate.
Thank you.
Okay, Delegate Weigel has a question. I bet I know what the question.
No, that's not a speed camera bill. It's a fine bill. But actually, 2 questions related. So one, the way I read it, it's not an up to amount. These are fines that are a set amount. So
I'm sorry, what's the question?
You're not saying up to $570. You're saying the fine is $570 or $530 or whatever. It's not up to.
Right. So again, I didn't go through the sliding scale because it was very detailed, but it's going to be sent to your inbox with the exact amounts. And again, these trying to be in sync with what when the police officers use their radar unit, we are trying to keep it in scale with that. And we used legislation that is not unprecedented. I believe District of Columbia has similar language.
All right. So, and then how were the amounts derived? They seem kind of like odd amounts.
Well, so I just said that, again, working with the constituents and the advocacy groups, we were trying to find a boundary where it wasn't so, you know, because that's the best way I can answer. really,
All right.
because there was no ideal number or fine. Just trying to get to the point of solving the egregious driving speed limits that are occurring on 210 now.
All right, thank you.
Delegate Jacobs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Delegate, there kind of similar questions to my colleague, Delegate Weibel, but I noticed it says from maximum exceeding 1 to 9 miles per hour, $530. Is that the set amount, $530 for 1 to 9 over?
Okay, so forgive me, I don't have the actual bill in front of me, but so I'm not sure what version you have now. I'm a little worried.
I've got the bill.
Okay, so what I was going to say was when we initially introduced the bill, there was completely wrong language in it. Council was using a special event venue for the fine. So I'm going to have to look at what is in your packet here because with the redrafting of the bill, it has been used, the fees that were, I'm sorry, the legislation that is now introduced is in sync with current statute. But as far as the fees are concerned, that was numbers that were selected by the group.
Well, it seemed like
So I think your questions, Delegate Jacobs, I apologize, will be answered with what is in your inbox if it's not there already with the breakdown of exceeding 55 mile per hour by 12 miles and over. When you say 1 to 9, that shouldn't be on there.
Well, that was what was originally in the bill, page 3, lines 5 through 7. That's what it said was exceeding by 1 to 9, which I was going to say most of these bills don't even kick in till you're at least 12 miles over.
Right. So I'm going to have to make sure that you have the correct version because, as I said, it was drafted initially incorrectly. And with what will be coming to your inbox, if not there already, is the breakdown of the current 210 speed camera fine exceeding and the repeat offender fines on 210. So if you still have questions based on what is being sent to your inbox, if it's not there already, please, I'm happy to answer those as well.
Okay, and where does this revenue go to?
It's not going to change what we already have in statutes. So your committee willingly, and I appreciate it. When it initially came in, I believe the subcommittee created a fund. Since then, it now is going towards the infrastructure and what's needed on 210 to like for pedestrian safety and the like.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Before I recognize Delegate Ruth, Delegate Valderrama, when the Prince George's delegation did this, I assume that you did it. I haven't read your bill yet, so I don't know the answer.
Okay.
I assume you did it with the thought in mind of the philosophy the committee has about, being sunsetted and the money going to fix the problem and all that stuff that we set out for speed camera bills.
Correct.
Okay. Delegate Ruth.
Sorry, Mr. Chair.
There you go.
Couldn't find the mute. Thank you. I actually had the same question about the fines for 1 to 9 miles over, and I'm looking at the version of the bill that's on our floor system. So definitely would appreciate if you could make sure we have that. I just did a quick search in my email and don't see a different version of it. But in terms of that, there is opposition testimony from Accokeek, Matawan, Piscataway Creeks Community Council, and they also seem to be focusing on that 1 to 9 miles over the speed limit. Have you been able to discuss with them their opposition?
No, I have not. I have
Okay.
not received, I haven't, unless I'm misspeaking, no one has contacted my office, but the group of advocacy groups, they're from throughout the district. So I welcome to have discussion regarding that. And as I said, I don't want to be a broken record, but I will get that information because the intent was not from. And again, the information that is in your inbox or will be today has the breakdown of the speed limits and excess and fines associated with that.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, I don't see any more questions for you, Delegate Valderrama. So go to the opponent, which Kelly Canavan with the Acket Creek Mattawoman Piscataway Creeks Community Council. Kelly, welcome to the committee. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. I need to say very quickly that I only saw the bill late and I'm working on whatever version is maybe the wrong version, but here we go. Good afternoon. I'm speaking on behalf of the Amp Creeks Council and asking you to vote unfavorably on 628. We're based along the Route 210 corridor, as are most of our several hundred members, and we've watched it grow and watched some of our loved ones get involved into very scary accidents on that road. Speeding and aggressive driving are a problem on 210, but we don't believe that these fines will have the desired effect. We believe that they could, in fact, do immeasurable damage to working excuse me, and middle-class folks. For example, if a person was to drive on 210 5 days a week, they going 57 miles per hour, by the time the first ticket came in the mail, they could owe $2,700 a week before they realize there's a camera or fines. If they drive that way on their way home too, they'd owe $5,400 a week. And if it takes 2 weeks for the first ticket to arrive, the amount of debt incurred, $10,800, could completely ruin them. My family's farm donates to a small food bank along 210, and on November 21st, they served 226 families, by far their record high. At the end of October, they'd given food to more than 3,000 families, 462 for the first time. This is a pattern that holds true for food banks up and down the highway. One ticket could destroy families like these. We'd like to see aggressive and drunk driving targeted instead of minor speeding. For that, higher fines and points are not unreasonable on any roadway. We looked at methods used to curb speeding in other jurisdictions and suggest these possible solutions as alternatives to the really high fines. Education campaigns, speed compliance incentives, narrowing the perceived lane width with paintings marked to designate a create stereoscopic illusion that the road is narrower than it is, and more signs along 210, rotating locations that tell drivers how fast they're going. We want 210 to be safe, but shaking down drivers is the wrong way to do it. Please vote no on this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for this witness? No questions?
Am I allowed to, or is that just for committee members?
It's only for committee members,
Got
but I see Delegate Ruth is, oh, come on. It works that way in your committee too. Come on.
No, I'm fine. I'm fine.
Delegate Ruth has a question.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. And I'm sure you heard me in my previous question. And if these fines were lowered such that the lower speed limits would not be fined, would that change your position?
Yes, excuse me. And I must say, I apologize that we hadn't reached out directly to Delegate Valderrama, who has been fantastic and really responsive, and we have just loved working with her in the past. We just only saw the bill at the very last minute, and so we didn't have an opportunity, unfortunately, to reach out. But yes, it's just about the amount of the fines. It's not about trying to change the behavior on the highway. We absolutely want the highway to be a safer place, but for that little bit of speeding, a fine like that is just bonkers.
Thank you.
So, Ms. Canavan, is it fair to say that the part of the bill you don't like is the enhanced fines for 1 to 9 miles over the speed limit?
That is the part that we are most upset with, and maybe even a little bit over that, just because the fines are so high. But Delegate Valderrama did a really good job of outlining some super egregious driving. People driving incredibly fast, dangerous ways, and repeatedly doing so. We do believe that should be targeted. So just to be clear, we're all in favor of targeting people who are driving at that level.
Okay. Any further questions for Ms. Canavan? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much. That ends the public hearing on House Bill 628. Let me proceed to House Bill 637, the Allegheny County delegation, and I bet our friend Wendell Beitzel will present on this bill.
Right here, Mr. Chairman.
None of the other members of the Allegheny County delegation could make it, could they?
That's and no other members of the Garrett County delegation either.
Okay, good.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, I'm Delegate Wendell Beitzel here to present House Bill 637. This is a very simple bill regarding bow hunting and a safety zone for bow hunting, and it applies only to Allegheny and Garrett County. This bill would permit reducing the safety zone from its current 150 yards down to 50 yards from a dwelling, resident, church, or any other building or camp that's occupied by human beings. And this puts it in the very same posture that Calvert County, Carroll County, Cecil County, Harford County, Montgomery County, St. Mary's County, and Washington County are already in. So I would ask for favorable consideration on this bill.
Okay, any questions for Delegate Beitzel?
That's the hearing.
Well, I don't see any, so I guess you get out of committee unscathed again. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. That ends the public hearing on House Bill 637. Dana, I'm going to ask you to take over. I'm going to have to take off here. Hopefully I'll be back, so.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Delegate Davis, House Bill 639. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair Stein, and distinguished members of the Environment and Transportation Committee. My name is Deborah Davis from District 28 in Charles County, and I'm proud to carry this bipartisan Southern Maryland delegation bill with unanimous support from Charles County, St. Mary's, and Calvert counties. HB 639, when passed, will culminate over 10 years of work of the Tri-County Council of Southern Maryland to establish a USDA-approved meat packing plant facility in Southern Maryland. Currently, farmers in the Southern Maryland region have to drive hundreds of miles one way to process their local product, their local meats. Specifically, this bill will allow Tri-County Council to contract to manage the Southern Maryland Regional Agricultural Center. We've already partnered with the local Amish community, which is extremely awesome, to set up this USDA packing facility. I have to make this distinction. And this bill will allow us to contract to make the Southern Maryland Regional Agricultural Center, and that will allow us to package the meat and to add value and distribution to the meats. We also foresee that this facility will provide a retail storefront, commercial kitchen, and facilities to cut and wrap the meats. So I invite you all to visit the new Southern Maryland Regional Agricultural Center, and thank you. We appreciate your favorable report.
Okay, thank you, Delegate Davis. Why don't we take witnesses in support of your bill, and then we'll take any questions, if that's okay.
Fine.
So first witness is listed as Craig Sewell, Southern Maryland Agricultural Development Commission. Is Mr. Sewell here? Okay, maybe.
I am, but I apologize, I was muted. So,
okay.
Thank you, Mr.
Very
Chairman. Thank you, Delegate Davis. It's nice to see you. I am the project manager for Southern Maryland Meats and also for the new Regional Agricultural Center, the RAC as we call it. This facility, the RAC, is being built in conjunction with St. Mary's County. And SMATIC, division of the Tri-County Council, will be under contract to be project managers and property managers for the RAC. I'll simply expand just a moment upon what Delegate Davis said. This is a unique opportunity to be able to bring localized meat processing and regulatory assistance and commercial kitchen assistance and food instruction to the producers and general population of Southern Maryland. It is forecast that we will employ up to 17 people when the RAC is operating in full capacity. The mission statement is actually quite simple. It's local producers working with local processors to sell to local consumers. In addition to that, the plans are to additionally do added values to some of the heritage brand meats that are being raised in Southern Maryland, shelf-stable. So we'll be able to extend our reach throughout the region. So thank you for allowing this to happen. This project is a huge boost for Southern Maryland, and in particular, and our agricultural industry as well. So thank you very much.
Great, thank you. Next presenter is John Hartline from the Tri-County Council for Southern Maryland.
Thank you, Chairman. And it's great to be here. This project, I've been involved as Executive Director for the Tri-County Council for 7.5 years. I was assigned to this project specifically 6 years ago. At that time, now Delegate Davis was chair, Commissioner Davis and chair of the Tri-County Council. So it feels great to see this thing through and come to fruition. We are asking for your support for this bill. It'll give us positive authority to operate the RAC. We already have an MOU in place with St. Mary's County. It'll be placed in Charlotte Hall, Maryland. And it'll be close to the current slaughter facility, USDA slaughter facility, being operated by the Amish. So it's great to have this all come together, and also to keep it so our farmers are not going to places like Spotsylvania County in Virginia, or all the way up to Harrisburg, or Cecil County. As much as I like Cecil County and I've been there, it's a long trip, and we would like to have the authority to produce these meats and sell these meats here in Southern Maryland and support our farmers and local growers. So I ask for your positive vote and support for this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And the last witness is Shelby Watson-Hampton from SMEDIC.
Yes, thank you so much for having us. And thank you, Delegate Davis, for championing this bill. My name is Shelby Watson-Hampton, and I'm the director of the Southern Maryland Agricultural Development Commission, known as SMEDIC, which, as we've explained, is a division of the Tri-County Council for Southern Maryland. We serve the 3 lower counties of Southern Maryland, including Prince George's and Anne Arundel, and we actually have several programs that do go statewide as well. Today, we're speaking on HB 639, which just requests a minor change in the Tri-County Council's general provisions that would allow SMATIC, as their agricultural division, the ability to act as property managers for the new Southern Maryland Regional Ag Center, which is being built in cooperation with St. Mary's County and will serve all surrounding counties as well as the greater Maryland area. As we said, the RAC will contain a butcher shop, cut and wrap facility, a finer meats processing facility, creation of a Southern Maryland meats charcuterie brand, apprenticeship programs, job training, a meat locker, and a cold storage facility, as well as a warehouse and distribution site, a commercial kitchen, an instructional kitchen classroom, and product storage facility. We're very excited because this has been a fully bipartisan, multi-county effort over a decade to bring to fruition for our farmers and neighbors. It will be the first of its kind in all of Maryland, and many within our own region and beyond are anxiously awaiting its opening. Our Southern Maryland delegation is in unanimous support of the project and the technical change to the governing language, and we thank them so much for their support. We ask that you continue to support this bill, and please let me know if you have any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions for the sponsor or the witnesses? Delegate Frazier-Hidalgo?
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Shelby, I would love the opportunity to have a conversation with you in the future about how we can replicate this program and do more of it in Montgomery County, maybe Frederick County. It just kind of, we're going through a lot of the issues with COVID and see a lot of opportunities that we are not taking advantage of as far as ag is concerned in the ag reserve. So I would love the opportunity. It sounds wonderful. Thank you.
Absolutely. And I have great respect for my colleagues in Montgomery County. We do work closely with the ag marketing professionals over there. So yes, anytime you would like to come down, and you're more than welcome to come down and view the facilities once they're up and moving, and to tour the USDA certified slaughterhouse as well. So.
Oh, that would be great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, that ends the bill hearing for House Bill 639. Thank you very much, Delegate Davis.
Thank you.
Next, we'll
Thank
turn
you.
to House Bill 840, Delegate Otto.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. Appreciate the opportunity to come to you. I am Delegate Charles Otto in District 38A, Somerset and Worcester County. This bill pertains particularly to my county of Somerset. It's HB 840 related to Sunday hunting for game bird and mammals. Basically, we're talking about turkeys and deer. We have a tremendous deer problem that create crop damage and automobile damage and safety factors that we'd like to address. And though we already have most of the Sunday hunting available, this would extend 1 or 2 Sundays for the deer and additional time for the wild turkeys, which has had a tremendous repopulation in our county. So we ask for a favorable report. And I'll welcome any questions. And I don't see any opposition to the bill.
That's correct. That's correct. Several individuals have submitted written favorable testimony, but no opposition. Are there any questions for Delegate Otto? Okay. Delegate Boyce?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Delegate Otto, so it says that it is on private property on each Sunday of game bird or game mammal season. Can you tell me what season that is and how many Sundays that will be, out of curiosity?
The fiscal note has an extensive background on what it pertains to. I mean, the big parts that would allow for the Sunday hunting in the season for deer, that would be bow season, and also firearm season is the big time. It would allow for 2 Sundays in that, which we already have those at this time now without this legislation. I think there's 1 Sunday that is added in January, and like the youth season.
Thanks, Delegate. I'm just trying to figure out how many Sundays a year this is. That's all. I know it says Sunday, but it says Sunday for a specific season.
I'd have to count them up. I couldn't tell you all.
It's okay, because it's not in the fiscal note.
It's what is allowed for DNR to allow for Sunday hunting. I'm trying to get all the Sundays that I can, is what it amounts to.
Oh, okay. I'll hold that for Dan. Well, okay.
Okay. I'll get back with you on that. I'll count them up and say I don't.
Okay, great. Delegate Frazier-Hidalgo, do you have a question, or is that from the last bill? No, okay. All right, Delegate Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to basically say, someone who grew up in Somerset County, just as Delegate Otto, whose entire family is in Somerset County, who spent the last 2 weekends leaving Annapolis, going down to Somerset, seeing the exponential growth of the deer population along the roadways. This is something that's long overdue. And, anywhere you look, from any vantage point in Somerset County, you're going to see deer and turkey. And so I, for one, am excited about the prospect of filling my freezer. Number 2, the prospect of safety on the roads, as well as property safetiness, what have you, crop damage control, things of that nature. And so I just would like to say to the good delegate from Somerset County, isn't that so?
Very much so. Thank you.
And it's a local bill, right?
That's correct.
All right. Right on.
Okay. Great. Actually, Delegate, I have a question. How big do these turkeys get? I mean, like weight-wise.
They're quite big. They don't like to fly, and occasionally when they take flight, I'm afraid sometime one's going to go through my windshield.
Oh, okay.
I mean, they get sizable. I'd say they probably get 25 pounds or.
Okay. Well, it's a good size bird.
Mhm.
Okay, any more questions for Delegate Otto?
Yeah, a quick question. just want to get a sense of how many hunters do you currently have in Somerset? Just thinking through creating more opportunity for hunting to take place. I mean, it's a local bill. I defer. I believe that
It's not just county residents that are hunters in Somerset County. We've always had a heritage of hunt clubs coming down or people seeking property to hunt from throughout the state.
Right. So I guess my question is more so along the lines of it's the increase in population. Is there a decrease in the participation of hunting overall? I'm just trying to make sure that I understand that having it happen on Sunday. I just want to make sure that I guess my question, this would be my question. Do we need more hunters overall, or do we really need more hunting days? I'm just trying to understand, is there an issue with is the sport of hunting on decline, and that's why we have more wild turkeys running around? Everybody's going to get some wild turkey instead of taking down some wild turkeys. But just trying to get some better understanding of what getting into the root cause. I understand adding more days is good, but as far as if we can reduce the harm that deers and turkeys are providing to us, but is there something we can do to increase hunting?
Much of it is our change in culture and the way our schedules are set up. I mean, used to be the big time for deer hunting was it was a 1 week from the Saturday after Thanksgiving until the following Saturday. And people came from around and spent the whole week there. Often we find now that people aren't spending the week.
It's the blue keys
down and maybe on Friday, catch the Friday evening and have Saturday and Sunday to hunt with the families.
Got it. Okay. Yes, I just want to get a better understanding of the hunting culture.
That is discussion since this morning. We have.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Any more questions?
Do you have any idea basically what?
Barry, you're not muted.
You could have the friggin' flu. Would you mind stepping?
Good month there, Delegate Jacobs. Okay, that ends the bill.
It's too late. Breathe all through the air.
Barry, Delegate Silverberg, I think you need to go on mute.
It's 3 o'clock session.
Barry.
You can mute him, Mr. Chair.
I muted him.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay, that ends the bill hearing for House Bill 840. Next, we'll turn to Delegate Barron, House Bill 977. And Delegate Barron, I understand you will also be presenting on House Bill 980 and House Bill 1010. Welcome.
Good afternoon, and thank you so much for having me with you all this afternoon. Again, for the record, I am Delegate Eric Barron. I happen to be chair of the Prince George's County House delegation. This and the two you referenced are local bills. This bill, particular House Bill 977, a little background, under existing law in Prince George's, the governing body of the county may impose a public safety surcharge on a new residential construction for which a building permit was issued by the county. This bill, as amended, renames the public safety surcharge to the public safety and behavioral health surcharge. The bill prohibits the surcharge from being imposed on the preliminary plan for the residential development that was approved on or before July 1st, 2005. In addition to other uses, the revenue collected from the surcharge now be used for the operation of behavioral health programs offered by the county, with at least 15% of the revenues to be used for programs that focus on mental health, or the construction or rehabilitation of behavioral health program facilities in the county. You should have a delegation letter. It was passed favorably out of delegation. The delegation fully supports it and hopes that you will issue a favorable report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Delegate. Why don't we go to the one witness who signed up in support, and then we'll take any questions. So I'd like to call up Richard Deshay Elliott. Is Mr. Elliott here?
We didn't
No?
see him in the waiting
Didn't see
room.
him. Okay. All right. Well, let's go to questions. Delegate Lehman?
Mr. Chairman, I do not have a question on this bill. I actually had a question for Delegate Otto on the last bill, but you didn't see my hand raised.
Oh, my apologies. Okay. Okay, well, let's see. Delegate Barron, I don't think there are any questions on this bill, so why don't we go to your next bill, House Bill 980.
Thank you again. Pleased to present House Bill 980. Again, for the record, my name is Delegate Eric Barron. I am Chair of the Prince George's County Council. House Bill 980 passed out a delegation favorably. You should have a delegation letter sent to the committee in support of the bill and referencing the vote on the legislation. This is a local bill as amended would, it is supported by the Prince George's County Executive, the County Council, and the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission, and introduced on their behalf. The passage of the bill is necessary to implement the second legislative phase of the county's zoning rewrite, which is the adoption of a county-wide map amendment for rezoning all properties in the county. Stated differently, without the passage of the bill, the county will not be able to finalize a 6-year-long legislative process, which commenced in 2014, to update the county's zoning and subdivision ordinances. With that, I will defer to testimony of, I believe we have county representatives who would testify to the legislation as well.
Okay, thank you very much, Delegate. We do have 3 individuals signed up, 1 favorable, 2 favorable with amendments. So why don't we go through the presentations and then we can take any questions. So I'd like to call up Rhea Harris from the Office of the Prince George's County Executive.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate it. Just wanted to say that this is something that has taken us a long time to get to, but we need to be able to move forward with economic development in the county. It is a local bill, and therefore the county executive and her office supports 980.
Okay, all right, thank you. Thank you very much. Next, we have favorable with amendments, Elizabeth Hewlett from the National Capital Park and Planning Commission.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Elizabeth Hewlett, Chair of the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission. I am so thrilled to be here with you today in support of this bill. This is so needed for Prince George's County. I wanted to thank the delegation, the House delegation, and everyone for working with us this time. It is a team effort. It is Prince George's County is behind the 8 ball without this countywide map amendment, and this will enable us to go forward. So we urge your favorable consideration of this bill, and we thank you for your time and your effort. This is teamwork at its best. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And then Todd Turner, favorable with amendments.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Acting Chair Stein, members of the Environment and Transportation Committee. I'm County Councilman Todd Turner, just the immediate past chair of the Prince George's County Council, here on behalf of the Prince George's County Council. I do want to thank first and foremost Chair Barron and the Prince George's House delegation for their support on this bill as it's amended. As indicated, this is a county supported bill both by the executive, the council, and the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission. As indicated, this is the second step of our update of our zoning ordinance and subdivision regulations. Park and Planning Commission went through a 4-year process to get us to a point of adopting the actual ordinance itself, which the County Council did after numerous public hearings, over 400 hearings before Park and Planning and the County Council over that period of time. We adopted the ordinance in 2018, and then that was the first part of the process. The second part is this countywide map amendment process. And what this bill does is just to seek a clarification, because we are doing, in essence, a comprehensive rezoning of the entire county land, is to make sure that this does not conflict with the public ethics law. So we would ask for your favorable support. We do, I'm not sure if they're in your record, we do have letters of support from the Prince George's County Chamber of Commerce, Prince George's County Business Roundtable, the Coalition for Smarter Growth, as well as the Prince George's County Municipal Association and the Prince George's Association of Realtors. So this was a team Prince George's County effort. We attempted to go through the process last year on this. Unfortunately, we got caught up in COVID-19. And when we rescheduled for a virtual hearing, this issue came up with respect to the state public ethics law. And so we did go to the State Ethics Commission to ask their assistance, and they suggested that we go to the General Assembly to get this clarification. So we thank you and we look forward to your favorable support.
Okay, thank you. We do have some questions. First is Delegate Holmes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've got two questions for Chair Barron, very, very briefly. As I recall, Chair Barron, this bill was approved unanimously by all those present in the delegation. Is that correct, Mr. Chair Barron?
Thank you, Delegate, for the question. I'm going to have to, if you can bear with me, scroll to find the vote sheet, because I'm sorry, I don't recall offhand.
That's okay. It was 18 in favor and there were several people absent. So all of those in favor, I mean, all of those that were present voted in favor of this bill unanimously amongst all those present. I just wanted to get that out there. And the second question is, Chair Barron, this is specific to Prince George's County only, a local bill. Is that correct, Mr. Chair?
Yep, specific to us, gorgeous Prince George's.
Thank you very much. And good to see you, Betty. Haven't seen you in a long time. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay,
thank you.
Very good. Next question is Delegate Ruth.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. So as I understand it, this is needed because it will prevent the zoning map process from going forward. Is that correct?
Yes, Delegate Ruth, if I can answer, if Delegate Barron will forgive me. So we had a two-step process. This countywide map amendment is I'll give you the little notes and bolts. So we went from approximately 73 zones, and we reduced those to about 43, and that's residential, commercial, industrial, mixed use kind of zones. And so what this second step of the process is simply putting the land as it's currently zoned in the most appropriate zone under the new zoning ordinance. So what happened is, under the current state ethics law for Prince George's County, you were required to file an affidavit whether or not you contributed or not contributed to members of the council. And in this case, it's a countywide map amendment process over 300,000 properties, 100,000 property owners. And so what we discovered was, by filing of the affidavits, there were people who contributed who, it's not necessarily developers or others. We've had utility companies that own land. And so what we discovered, because we required this affidavit as part of our second step of the process, that because of the restrictions of the state ethics law, that we could not be able to complete a comprehensive rezoning as we thought.
So because of filing this affidavit, the members had to recuse themselves, is that?
Correct. Whether or not, once an application is filed and there is a contribution, let me distinguish. Normally under the public ethics law, there's the individual application. Somebody's coming forward, a property owner. In this case, it's a public process. It's initiated by the county council and the Park and Planning Commission. So we have to, and we can't change zoning without giving people the opportunity to comment. So we complied with the state law in the countywide map amendment process to require the affidavits to be filed. We had an initial hearing scheduled in March of last year that was canceled because of COVID. And then we had another one, a virtual one, discovered in November, and as staff was going through all the affidavits, we discovered that because there were contributions, again, it captures everybody, any particular resident as well. If they filed, that automatically puts that council member out. So we did not have a majority of the council to go forward with that second hearing.
So you have received quite a few affidavits.
Yes.
And have you disclosed those affidavits? Have those been published, made public?
So we do respond currently under the state ethics law. We're required to, the clerk of the council is required to compile those and report those to the State Ethics Commission. In this case, we received at least 2 that I'm aware of, Maryland Public Information Act requests, and we have complied with those requests, and that information is public.
Okay, but you have to file an MPIA request. You're not actually publishing it otherwise.
Under the current state law, has to be a written request for that. And so we require that to track it as a Maryland Public Information Act request.
So if this bill were to pass, it would also prevent, not just, I mean, I totally get the difficulties moving forward, but is there an issue with the disclosure part of the current law where I understand you're having people having to recuse themselves and not be able to pass, but this also seems like it's important information for the public to have.
I think that's a good conversation poised for another part of a bill. We're just simply asking for this one clarification so we can complete the current public process that we have to adopt our new zoning ordinance. We've tried it twice before and never gotten this far. As part of that, the council has no bones about having the information required. That's what the state law requires, and we comply with the state law.
Right, but if this bill,
may I elaborate a little bit? This is Betty Hewlett, Chair of Park and Planning Commission. The difference here is, as Councilmember Turner indicated, this is a completely different process from an individual application. And so it's countywide. It's a government initiated process that will implement the zoning rewrite, which is our zoning ordinance was antiquated, over 50 years old. Now it's okay for people like me, but not for zoning ordinances that had conflicting provisions and whatnot. So we've made it user-friendly, reduced the number of zones, and it's a government-initiated process that will cover the entire county. And the thing I want to emphasize is that there's no discretion on the part of any council member here. They will have to follow the formulas that are in the actual zoning ordinance that's been adopted. So that's what makes it especially tight, and eliminating the discretion on the part of the council member. And that is why we need this clarification, because in this, it's probably a once in a lifetime thing here for us. So I just wanted to point that out, and I'm not an elected official. I chair the Planning Commission, but we're all on board with this because Prince George's County is suffering without moving forward on this zoning rewrite and the CMA that will implement the countywide map amendment that will implement this, the zoning ordinance. So the discretion is removed. So therefore there are precautions in place. Thank you.
thank you so much. And you have to forgive me. I'm not familiar with Prince George's zoning
okay.
process.
And Delegate Ruth, I just respond saying that the current restrictions, when there's an individual application for a development plan or rezoning, we're not asking to change those at all. So those still apply. So you still have to recuse yourself in an individual application as well.
Sure. Thank you. And I do appreciate that. But isn't it possible that some of these changes that you're making on a countywide basis would benefit developers who have certain properties?
And let me just say, Delegate, if we could make that your last question, since we do have a number of other questions.
Sure.
So,
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. I guess the short answer would be it could, yes, because we are reducing the number of zones. We're changing some of the uses within the zone. That's why we got to have a public process and allow people to come before us. And that's why they have to file the affidavit under the current law. And that's why we found ourselves not being able to move forward. So it is narrow. The amendment was to sunset it in the summer of 2022. It's our goal. It was our expectation to complete this process last year, over a year timeframe. So that would be our goal again. If this legislation were to pass, that would give us, roughly, 16 months to complete the process, and then everything goes back to the way it is.
Thank you.
okay, Delegate Terraza.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sorry, just making sure I was off mute. I'm trying to figure out where to start. First of all, just really quickly, is there an amendment that sunsets this? Because I didn't see it. Maybe I'm missing it.
Yes, there is.
Yes, there is an amendment that sunsets the bill.
When does it sunset it?
December of 2022.
Okay, but folks wouldn't have to report. They wouldn't have to do anything. They wouldn't have to report at all in that time frame.
So
For this process,
right, for the countywide map amendment process.
only this.
Right. If there's an individual application for rezoning or development,
No, and as you know, Councilman Turner, since we know each other back from our Mako days,
good to see you.
I'm very
Delegate.
familiar with. Good to see you. I spent years on the county council in Howard County and on the zoning board, and so I'm very familiar with the rezoning process and then comprehensive rezoning. Do you guys in Prince George's County not do comprehensive? I understand that this was a bigger overall comprehensive rezoning, but do you not generally do comprehensive rezonings? I mean, I thought you do. So this is not just a unique once in a lifetime thing. I understand it's a bigger one maybe, but you do comprehensive rezonings.
I would say that, and we specify in the language that this is for the countywide map amendment process, is that's how we define it. It is a comprehensive rezoning. But I'll turn to Ms. Hewlett, who's been chair of the commission for years now, and I can't recall the last time we did a countywide rezoning process, at least in my time in the county.
Yeah, this is a little bit different from your typical countywide rezoning, because we've been trying, this is our third time trying to get a new, up-to-date, modernized, user-friendly zoning ordinance without the conflicting provisions, without the piecemeal corrections that took place over the past 50 years. And so this is implementing that we paid countless dollars to consultants to have a user-friendly and a zoning ordinance that makes sense. And pursuant to that is why we're reducing the number of zones. And many of the zones, if not most of the zones, will be similar to what we have in place now. They just have new names, and we're putting more residential together and more.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Ms. Hewlett. I'm sorry. I just want to make sure that I can ask my questions. I'm very familiar with the comprehensive rezoning process. And I remember when you guys started, I was somewhat jealous of how much expertise you were bringing in. And I think that was a great process. But I guess I'm trying to understand how we find ourselves here. I mean, in your testimony and in Ms. Harris's testimony, my understanding was sort of like, this is so exciting, we're doing comprehensive rezoning, but this isn't a comprehensive rezoning bill. This is an ethics bill, right? And so I'm trying to figure out how we got to where we are. Like, are people still receiving contributions? Like, when was the last, like, that's what I'm trying to understand, is how did we get to where we are? Because I knew you guys were working on comprehensive rezoning for years. And we had this ethics law. I mean, we knew that you had this ethics law in place last year. So I don't understand how we're in this position. Can somebody explain to me how we're still here and what's preventing from these contributions continuing to come in, if either with or without us lifting this ethics provision? Because I mean, I'm certainly not trying to stand in the way of you guys doing this work or completing this, I guess you said 6-year process. I've known about it for some number of years, but I don't know if it was 6. I mean, I don't want to stand in the way of that. And I understand why all of your delegates voted for it, but I'm concerned about some of the ethics issues that are being raised here.
I'll try to answer that as best I can, Delegate. So Prince George's County is unique that we have this public ethics law that requires one to restrict contributions. And if there is a contribution, there's a result of that, meaning that whoever received that contribution cannot participate in any part of the development review process. So think about it in an individual case. Somebody's filing for a development review or a rezoning of their individual property. If I, Todd Turner, received a contribution from somebody along those lines, it could be an individual, an entity, somebody who's involved in the project, and I received that contribution for a period of 3 years prior to that application being filed, under the current ethics law, I would have to recuse myself from that. This is, as Ms. Hewlett said, this is unique. We're trying to rezone the entire county at the same time, unlike an individual matter. However, we put into the authorizing legislation to start the countywide map amendment process, that you had to file an affidavit. We wanted to follow the state law as we understood it. You have to file the affidavit as part of that process. But you can imagine, as opposed to having a finite number of people who are on a single application, we have a countywide process. And hate to say it, all of us, raise our money from individuals within our community. And so if they're going to come, even if they didn't make a contribution or they did make a contribution, they still have to file the affidavit under the law. And if they're going to appear before us in some way. And so, Chair Hewlett didn't say, but there is a public process if we were to get this legislation passed that we have to go through, that people can participate and go on record that maybe they agree with what their zoning is or not. But as Chairman Hewlett said, there's a process. The Planning Commission is going to make a recommendation to the council with respect to that property. And it for most part, obviously we're reducing the number of zones, but residential zones are going to be residential, commercial, industrial, and then we have mixed use zones. So that's where we found ourselves. So once you opened it up to everybody in the council, we got the affidavits that were filed in preparation for the second public hearing in November. And we discovered, because we got contributions, I'll give you my example. I only had one contribution, but it knocked me out, was from somebody contributed to a political action committee, and that political action committee contributed to me over 3 years ago. Because of that, they filed an affidavit, and therefore I would not be able to participate in any part of the countywide map amendment process. And even in speaking with the State Ethics Commission, they also said, we don't think that that should apply to this kind of comprehensive rezoning or the countywide map process.
Just real quick follow-up on that, Councilman Turner. I thought, and maybe I'm now forgetting your law, but I thought it was for 36 months. So aren't we coming up on, if this was 3 years ago?
Personally, yes, I can, but there are other members of the council, there are 11 of us that have received.
Yeah, I mean, and that's why, with all due respect to the other council members, I appreciate your issue, and it sounds like you're well aware that you're in the middle of this. I just don't understand how people who've known this is going on for 6 years don't know that there's this law out there. It seems to me that that's I don't know. I guess I'm just having trouble with why they wouldn't know that there was this law out there and that this would violate it.
Well, I don't know. May I jump in? I don't know that it does violate it. And that's why we're seeking this clarification, because it applies to every single household, every single piece of property in the entirety of Prince George's County. And if you have 11 council members, clearly, when they run, some money's going to come from somewhere in the county. So they would all be precluded in a county-wide process like this. And that is why we're asking for this distinction, because they do not have the flexibility. They do not have the discretion. They still have to report contributions. It is a safe process. I would not be on here. I'm not an elected official. I would not be on here totally in unison. Neither would the county executive be in support like this. Neither would the business community. We had over 400 meetings with the county, with different groups. And then we will have, as Councilman Turner indicated, we have, if we go forward here, we will have more hearings and more public input. So there's a distinction here. There's a clear distinction because it applies to every piece of property in the county. And that is why we need clarification, and we seek clarification. And we're all on board with this because this is totally separate from the others. They still have to report contributions. It will still, those affidavits will still apply to every single individual piecemeal rezoning or rezoning request.
But they don't have to report the contributions related to this if this passes the way it is.
So Delegate, currently as our county code is, the legislation that we did in 2018 to establish what the process was going to be for the second phase, the countywide map amendment, we require the affidavit to be filed. What we're asking for with this legislation is they can still file the affidavit, but
vote.
Members are still able to
can vote.
So there is public disclosure.
Oh, I thought you were saying only for piecemeal zoning, because for my colleagues who are not as familiar with piecemeal,
I apologize for that.
Piecemeal is sort of different, a whole different process than comprehensive rezoning. So in comprehensive rezoning, even if we pass this, you would still have to do the reporting.
Yes, so you can still file the affidavit. It just wouldn't necessarily, so you still have the disclosure. You just wouldn't have to recuse yourself.
Because I thought that's what Delegate Ruth was asking about. I thought this was suspending the whole thing. but I'll have to look.
Oh.
I'll let
Okay.
I know other people have questions. I'll just take a look at the bill closer while they do that.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm back. Delegates Weigel, Stewart, Healy, and Terraza. Jen, did you?
I've just, there you go.
Okay, Weigel, Stewart, and Healy in that order.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I better understand with the dialogue in regards to my question, but so someone could still contribute, but you were just precluded from voting on the comprehensive rezoning if this legislation is not passed, correct?
Correct.
All right, so in your comprehensive rezoning, you are, I assume, rezoning individual properties potentially to higher densities?
Potentially, depending on what the zone is. For the most part, and Ms. Hewlett can do this because I remember this rotely, 95% of the properties are kind of a one-to-one transfer, meaning that if you're a residential property, you're going to be a residential property. If you're a commercial property, you're going to be, we're just reducing the number of zones and then what we call them. Same thing for industrial. And then we have special provisions for if you're mixed use, which zone would you fall more properly in, because we have regional transit zones, we have local center zones, those kind of things, not getting too much into the detail. So, it could be the case that there's a different use that's allowed under the new zone that's not currently allowed under this zone as part of the zoning update.
So if somebody were basically upzoned, and rather than an overall blanket protection, what I'm thinking is if someone's property were upzoned and the council member accepted a donation from an individual whose property was upzoned, could they be the ones then that you would have to excuse yourself from the vote, or is that still too large?
We have over 300,000 properties in Prince George's County.
But how many of them are upzoned to that 300,000? You said 95% weren't.
No, 95% of our equivalent zone for what they're in. There might be different uses allowed within those zones though. So that's why I hate to put a caveat on that, but that I want to be honest.
So can I jump in a little bit here too? Part of the problem here is that Prince George's County is under a restriction that most counties are not under. And it really is hampering our ability in terms of economic development. It presents many, many challenges. And we understand that, and we're not trying to change, and that we're not trying to change that ethics law at all. Because that is a law that's in place, that applies to the county council, that's fine for individual piecemeal zonings. But we have this mess of an antiquated zoning ordinance, and we're trying to move forward. We are hamstrung in terms of our economic development initiatives that most counties are not subjected to.
Yeah, I get all that. But so my last question, so if we pass this law, amend this, would the individual making the donation still have to disclose that? It would
Yes.
the council member to vote, correct?
Correct.
But they still have to disclose the contribution.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Delegate Stewart, and then Jen, do you have your hand up again? Okay, Delegate Stewart.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon. This bill really sort of tears at me because the ethics stickler in me makes me think, oh man, should we really forgive, what appears to be kind of either a misinterpretation of the law or an ignorance of the law and sort of, bail out the council? What kind of dangerous precedent does that set? So that's kind of the ethics side of me. But then, the zoning side of me thinks, well, it's clear y'all have put a lot of hard work and good work into it. I don't want to hold up, a zoning text, countywide zoning amendment map that would otherwise benefit the county. And of course, it is a local bill, as Delegate Holmes pointed out. So my question is there a reason that y'all drafted it to be prospective? Meaning, I understand the sunset amendment, which I think is a good amendment. But is there a reason that we have to allow contributions between the time we pass the bill and the bill sunsetting? Right. And is there some sort of, why is there any prospectivity for this bill, and why not just purely make it retrospective, sort of past forgiveness for contributions that we recognize it's a little bit icky to do, but we want to, allow y'all to move forward, but we don't necessarily want developer contributions to continue from now all the way up to the 11th hour to the night before the passage of the final map amendment?
Delegate, thank you. It's a very good question. I don't think anybody has asked it in that kind of way during our discussion. In essence, we tried to put the simplest piece of legislation we could because we know it's very tricky if you have ethics in it, and we understand, and as the council, we comply with the state ethics law as it is now. We just found ourselves in a circumstance that we could not complete this process without coming to you to get this clarification as part of it. So,
I get that, and as someone who's often accused of putting in bills that are too complex, I totally get the urge for simplicity.
Oh no.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for backing me up there. But so I guess my question, Councilmember Turner, is just, would the council be opposed to an amendment making this purely retrospective?
I don't think you have to go back to the council as part of that, since it's part of the conversation today. And that's why we go through this legislative process to get feedback on our legislation as you do at the state level, we do at the local level. So can I take that back and have our
of course.
staff take a look at that issue as part of that?
May I ask a question? If we do that, if I'm not on the council, but if we do that, I mean, we're trying to get to the point of a public hearing this year. I just want to make sure if we do something like that, will that impair our time frame? We've struggled. We've had consultants. We've gone so far.
Well, let me just suggest that rather than asking the Prince George's County Council if a retrospective approach would be better, I think what would be better would be to reach out to our colleagues and the chairman of the Prince George's County, the chair of the Prince George's County delegation first, because while we appreciate the fact that the bill is supported by the Prince George's County government, it's really the property. It's really the property of our Prince George's County colleagues. So it is to them that the question ought to first be asked, and then if they want to solicit that opinion from their government back home, then they can do that. I think that's
and I'll take that on, Mr. Chairman, myself. I won't give the council member any more work. I happen to be particularly fond of the chair of the Prince George's County delegation, so I'm happy to find any excuse to chat with him.
I was just looking for a reason to hang out with Delegate Barron.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe even on the House floor where I haven't even been this session.
Except once. Okay, Delegate Terraza.
Yeah, I just want to clarify, because maybe your comprehensive zoning is different, but you wouldn't be down zoning people, generally speaking. Isn't that correct, Ms. Hewlett? Well, or Councilmember Turner, if you've been I don't know if you've been part of a comprehensive zoning process. No.
And before that.
I forgot to mention, I actually ran our comprehensive zoning process when I was chair of the county council. So I do have some experience with this. But you wouldn't down zone, like, I guess if anybody's asking for a zoning change, generally speaking, they would be asking for an up zoning. Isn't that?
We, Delegate, unfortunately, and maybe based on your experience, we have no idea what somebody's going to come to a public hearing and ask for. I mean, that's the difficulty, but we can't even get to the public hearing.
Yeah, but you might imagine that nobody would ask to be down.
I can't say that with certainty. There's some people who want, to go back to a residential kind of thing.
Right, but if you go back to residential, that's not necessarily a down zoning. You can be zoned residential and have a much more dense or much more valuable piece of property. That's just a different zoning, not a down zoning.
Well, I mean, we also have open space zones and reserved open space, so that there could be requests for somebody to be residential.
Come back afterwards. I'd love to hear about it.
I unfortunately, I'm at a disadvantage because I'm coming in at the middle of this, but could the Prince George's County members of the committee tell us what the vote was in the delegation?
Yeah, I just got the, I'm sorry.
Sure, go ahead, Delegate Healy.
I'm sorry. I just happened to get a copy of it. It was, I think 18-0 with 5 absent. They were not even around for the discussion. So that was the vote in the delegation.
Okay. That is correct. Unanimous amongst those present.
And the committee too.
That's correct, Mr.
Okay, forgive me for slowing things down to ask that question. Delegate Terraza, are you finished? Can I go to Delegate Clark? Delegate Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a question for the council member. When you do go through a comprehensive rezoning, I've been through one in Calvert County, but it's a whole lot smaller than what you're going through, that's for sure. Do you individual council members that represent their district, does their opinion or their mindset sway any heavier on how things are rezoned or updated in their individual district than, say, the district on the other side of Prince George's County?
So again, we haven't gone through a comprehensive rezoning process, at least in my time in Prince George's County. That's going on 20 years now. So you got to put in, we keep on trying to distinguish because this is a countywide process as opposed to an individual or piecemeal process. And so, yes, we do, the council member who represent that area, what they like to do with that particular, say an individual case will have a say into what goes on. But this is a different process. This process is a joint process between the county council and the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission, which is our planning department, for lack of a better term. And so we're going to do the joint public hearing, which we've been trying to do for the last year. We'll get public input with respect to the zones. There may be people who come forward and say, I want this zone instead of that zone. We can't restrict them from doing that because we're dealing with their individual property rights. Right. And so, but Park and Planning is going to compile that information based on the public hearing and then make a recommendation for that property. And so under the ordinance that we adopted to set up that process, that's the process. So it could be a situation where Park and Planning says, yes, we made a mistake in this particular property and we're recommending this zone. And so the council will undertake to look at that and say, okay, do we agree with that or not? So that's the process as it's been laid out for us going forward. But it's not unlike where an individual comes in and says, I want this, I filed an application, and all those there's no application here. It's just people have the right to come before their governing body to say, I agree with it or don't agree with it. And then
okay, look, let's, it's, quarter to
apologize.
Here. Why don't we move on to the opponents of the bill, and then I'll entertain questions for them. So the opponents are in the following order: Greg Smith, Henry Cole, Kelly Canavan, Balachandran. It's those four. So let's start with Greg Smith. Greg, are you out there? Nope. Okay, let's go to Henry Cole. Is Henry Cole out there?
Mr. Chairman, I'm here. This is Greg Smith.
Oh, Greg Smith. Oh, Greg, I thought it might be you. How are you doing? Welcome to the committee. You have 2 minutes, sir.
I'm doing well, thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman Barbe, Vice Chairman Stein, and committee members. I live in Prince George's County, and I serve on the board of 2 local nonprofits, Community Research, through which I've submitted written comments, and Sustainable Hyattsville. Since 2018, I have participated in the county's land use and zoning processes, testifying before the planning board several times, and bringing cases before the district council twice. I'm a party to 3 lawsuits challenging the decision in state court. Along with Kelly Canavan, Henry Cole, and others, I raised concerns about certain defects in the zoning rewrite back in 2018, and about the fact that we understood hundreds of amendments had been submitted just weeks before the council planned to vote. I urged the committee to issue an unfavorable report on HB 980. Over the years, the General Assembly has built into Maryland's public ethics laws a range of common sense measures that aim to ensure the credibility, fairness, and credit of the zoning and land use decisions. Those provisions generally are not unduly onerous, and at a time when too many people have too little faith in government, it's essential that the General Assembly avoid further eroding that faith. I'd like to share with you what my neighbors and I have seen when it comes to how the district council has dealt with the public ethics law in our cases. We've documented that the property owner and applicant have failed to file required business entity affidavits. We notified the council through the clerk, and it was only on a day of the hearing that issue was addressed, and the council had to postpone the hearing. We've documented the property owners and agents have made what clearly were or probably were illegal contributions to city council members and or to candidates who were elected to the county council, but who then voted to approve the project we were challenging. In our review of the case file, we found that none of the required ethics affidavits from the agents or the council members. And rather than recuse themselves, those council members participated, voting on procedural motions and or to approve the project. No one on the council or council staff generally flagged those violations. If anyone did, we did, and we were participating entirely as volunteers, doing our best to raise serious issues before the planning board and the council. So we were having to police them both on compliance with the zoning ordinance, but also with the land use article and the public ethics law. This was deeply concerning to us. I'd like to address some of the comments that Mr. Turner has made. First of all,
well, you know, why don't you wrap up? I imagine there'll be questions.
Yeah, if the committee would like, I would like to address some of the comments that Mr. Turner has made. I think that they're incorrect and
well, I'm going to go on to the other people who are testifying, who are signed up to testify, and then I'm sure there'll be questions. So
okay.
Let me go to Kelly Canavan.
What are we doing?
Kelly, you out there? I thought I saw you.
Yep. Hello. Thank you.
Okay. Welcome back to the committee. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you, sir. I'm Kelly Canavan, lifelong resident of Prince George's County and president of the Amp Creeks Council, speaking on behalf of that organization and at their request for the Patuxent Riverkeeper, Maryland Legislative Coalition and their Climate Justice Wing, Friends of Oxon Hill and the Moyone Association, and the Southern Maryland Audubon Society. We have been heavily involved in this process. HB 980 asks you to endorse a breach of ethics. Any bill that asks for permission to not live up to the public ethics law should be voted down immediately. A zoning rewrite isn't a project approval procedure. It should just be tidying up the code. So the fact that it's full of applications for specific projects that want intent zoning, upzoning is a red flag. These aren't all little requests and $10. Some of these are mammoth projects that we've been fighting for more than a decade and would change the face of much of the county. And this ain't the council's first rodeo with major ethics violations. Some money may have been innocent, but we know that the development industry is full of people who give with clear intent. That the council can't achieve a quorum to vote their new ordinance through is their own fault. But they've come to you looking for a loophole in an ethics law that needs to be stronger, not made into Swiss cheese. Voting yes would set a terrible precedent that they can run to the state every time they need a get out of jail free card. If you vote no, there will be some months before a council vote can take place, but it doesn't mean the zoning ordinance can never be passed. It gives the council time to work with community members to strengthen the rewrite. We will be permanently impacted by it when it does pass, and that needs to be taken seriously. This isn't now or never. A job well done is worth the wait. There is much to love in Prince George's, but our local government has always been a corrupt embarrassment. We need a break from spending all our time and money chasing these people around, trying to make them behave. Please vote no on HB 980.
Thank you. Is Suchitra Balachandran there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. I always love it when an Indian American with a difficult to pronounce name comes before the committee of Kumar Prabhakar Barwe. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman Barwe. It's always nice to have my name pronounced correctly, and it doesn't happen very often. So I think that's mutual admiration. Chairman Barwe, Vice Chair Stein, and members of the committee, I'm Suchitra Balachandran. I'm the chair of Our Revolution Prince George's, and I'm here speaking in opposition to this bill. As we have heard, the county-wide map amendment process, which was preceded by the zoning rewrite, has been in effect for 6 years. The council has been aware of this process for 6 years and has been aware of the language of the ethics law much longer. That the council finds itself in a position of being unable to meet a quorum for the zoning map amendment hearings is because contributions were made by developers and their agents and accepted by council members. So when the process was undertaken, the council knew that applications would be made and contributions would be received, and they could have amended their own laws to ensure that this did not happen, but they didn't. So PG 416/2021, which is now HB 980, would allow on a county-wide scale actions that are rightly prohibited at the local level and the project level. Prince George's residents, I think, are very glad that we have a state ethics law that governs development to this extent. And we hope that this law will in fact be strengthened. And I think the whole process has lacked transparency, because we did write a letter when the bill was being heard in delegation at the County Affairs Committee, asking for transparency, because the council knew which contributions and which applications had rendered the quorum unable to meet. They knew that. We asked for it to be made public, and they chose not to do that. As Councilmember Turner said, if you ask for it through a Public Information Act request, you will get it 30 days later. And that should not be the criteria by which transparency is viewed. So I will end my testimony here. I'm happy to take questions. Thank you.
Okay, I imagine that there are questions. I'd be pretty surprised if there weren't. Well, right now I'm kind of surprised. What can I say?
Mr. Chairman, I think you missed Henry Cole. He's up.
Oh, no, I called you and you weren't there. Go ahead, Mr. Cole. Pardon me.
All right, thank you. You're pardoned.
And you thought only President Trump could do that. Okay. You know what? You're muted. Go ahead and reset the clock, Pete, please, Trish.
Okay, thank you. Well, I don't want to pardon those who broke the law, including members of the county council. I think that's a shame. And we don't want to reward that or continue that by any means that they come up with. I don't disagree with Ms. Hewlett that the rezoning process is vital to the county. It's critical for the county's future, whether it's natural resources, adequate public transit, public health, and the preservation of farmlands, which we will desperately need as climate changes in the future. However, current zoning laws allow developers to contribute to council members who then pass amendments to subvert established land use zones. For example, major subdivisions in rural lands. We don't need more of that. We don't need a Swiss cheese kind of process, which enables money developers to make contributions without disclosure. And that's exactly what happened here. If HB 980 passes, developers seeking zoning changes in the plan will be free to contribute to council members, I guess, for the next 18 months or something. On zoning changes sought by the same developers. Council members will not have to obey public ethics affidavit rules by disclosing either these contributions or currently prohibited communications about zoning requests. In short, this bill is a breach of legislators' duty to uphold the public trust. Please vote no. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Delegate Ruth has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So as I understand from the testimony of the county council and others, this process is different from the normal process where developers can apply for upzoning, then that this is meant to do like a restructuring of the zoning map. Can developers apply for upzoning during this process? For whoever wants to
Sorry,
do that.
I was trying, my mute button got stuck.
No, this question was for the opposition.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah, would anybody in the opposition care to respond to that?
I would.
Go ahead, Greg.
Yes. So Yes, they absolutely can. In fact, they have. Um, we have seen some of the documents, and we've seen already that some developers are applying for upzoning. And our concern is if they do it through this process, we have two concerns. First of all these zoning requests would be tucked into the CZMA consideration and hearing and not subject to the normal standard of review and normal steps of review. And second of all, passage of this bill would eliminate all of the requirements and prohibitions that apply to, through this ethics law to not only the the zoning-wide map amendment but could apply to these individual applications for upzoning that are tucked in as comments to on the CZMA. So that's a huge concern. And if I could point out, Mr. Turner's statement that that the council can respond only to a Public Information Act request before publishing its information is simply false. The council and the planning board of their own volition publish this kind of information all the time. They don't have to be asked to publish this information. They have been asked and they've chosen not to.
So if this bill were passed, would it prevent those disclosure requirements as well as exempting the council members from voting?
Well, if you're asking me, I'll say this. The zoning map amendment is the first kind of application listed in the ethics law as being subject to the following stipulations and requirements and prohibitions. If you exempt the zoning map amendment itself as an application from those requirements and prohibitions, you remove those requirements and prohibitions from this process, period. There's nothing in this bill that parses that down at all.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
May I also reply to Delegate Ruth? Is that okay?
Yes, you can. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. To your first question, Delegate, about whether or not people could apply for specific upzonings, people can ask for whatever they want. However, the county council can say no to things as well. The county council should be guided in this, not by contributions, not by individual requests, but by looking at a broad picture of the county and what is best for the county as a whole. And that should be guided by plans already in place, like the Green Infrastructure Plan or the subregion master plans. And those are plans that lay out what we want for our county, a healthy county, a county that, does the best in all the ways. But what we're seeing instead is these specific projects that are popping up and they're coming back like monsters, and they're like for a big subdivision right here, or a great big upzoning over here where it doesn't make any sense. And these things, they don't fit seamlessly into the fabric of what we're doing with the county. They're like a pox. They're just little blotches here and there. It's not something that's consistent throughout the county or that makes sense in an overall view of the county.
May I just have a quick comment on
Sure.
that?
Yes, go ahead.
So I failed to say that I'm a co-chair of Prince George's Clean Air and also a board member of Patuxent Riverkeeper. These organizations have fought improper development that jeopardizes natural resources, public health, the environment, public transportation, et cetera. I would ask the delegates to look into the future. The changes that are being made by developers and complicit members of the council will affect climate change. We need to have a zoning plan and a zoning process that's consistent with the future, with the need to preserve agricultural lands, with the need to have development that doesn't require increases in automobile traffic. We need to think ahead. And the way to do it is not to allow business as usual. So I would urge, I agree with my colleagues who have spoken against this. We all have been in this fight for a long time. And we've seen what happens when developers shake the hands and exchange money with the members of people who are supposed to uphold the public trust. Thank you.
Are there any other questions for any of these witnesses? Seeing none, thank you very much. That concludes the public hearing on House Bill 980.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Go
Thank you,
down
Mr.
to
Chairman.
House Bill 1010. And who's presenting that? You, Delegate Barron?
That would be me, Mr.
All
Chair.
right.
Thank you
All
so
right.
much. Again, for the record, Delegate Eric Barron on behalf of the Prince George's County House delegation. I chair the delegation. This bill, House Bill 1010, I recommend to you. It passed unanimously out of the delegation, 20-0. The bill exempts property from county property tax if the conditions are met. The county may enter into a payment in lieu of taxes agreement with an owner of real property who's engaged in construction or operating certain housing structures or properties or projects. The property that is subject to the pilot agreement must be used for a housing structure or project that is constructed or rehabilitated under certain law and local government programs or acquired under the county's right of first refusal program. Owner of the real property subject to the pilot agreement must agree to certain requirements for the use of the property as low-income housing. I do believe we have a representative from the county executive's office, and I would refer to her. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, we have Rhea Harris and Andy Rogers. Rhea, are you with us?
I am, but I'm going to defer to Ms. Rogers, sir.
All right, Angie Rogers then.
Good afternoon. I'm Angie Rogers. I'm the Deputy Chief Administrative Officer for Economic Development in Prince George's County. On behalf of County Executive Elsa Brooks, we're grateful for the continued support in our fight to preserve, protect, and expand affordable housing in Prince George's County. I come before you today to urge your favorable consideration of an amendment to the payment in lieu of taxes agreement for low-income housing. In 2019, the county completed its comprehensive housing strategy, which set forth a 10-year plan to serve the housing needs of all county residents, both current and future, while expanding access to opportunity through housing investments. One of the key elements of the strategy was to use public policy and resources to help produce new housing options, especially for lower income households that are not always ably served by the private market. From 2010 to 2018, almost 3,000 units of housing countywide been supported by the use of pilots. The utilization of this tool in order to produce and preserve affordable units has been invaluable and has allowed us to create and maintain homes for Prince Georgians who might have otherwise been displaced in a market that's seen rising rents and home values. Most recently, opportunities to create meaningful transit-oriented development have also contributed to escalating real estate costs. But these increasing costs means that developers are less likely to build or maintain traditional affordable housing options without tools like the pilot. So the proposed amendment language before you seeks to expand the permitted units, particularly so that we can use these in transactions that might be acquisition heavy transactions, which is increasingly important as we look at our transit-oriented development areas like the Purple Line, like Suitland, Largo, et cetera. So your favorable consideration is greatly appreciated, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, Rhea, would you like to add anything, or shall I just go straight to questions?
I suggest I don't have anything to add, sir.
Okay, any questions for the sponsor or any of these presenters? Okay, seeing none, thank you so much. Let's go on to House Bill 1061. And I think presenting for that bill will be Doug Patterson, who I don't see at the moment.
I'm here.
She's there.
Oh, and there you are. I see you now. Go ahead, Edith. Welcome to the Environment and Transportation Committee.
Well, thank you, Chairman Barvet, Vice Chairman Stein, and members of the Environment and Transportation Committee. For the record, I'm Delegate Edith Patterson, Chair of the Charles County Delegation. I'm delighted to bring this bill before you. House Bill 1061, the Southern Maryland Dwelling Registration and Inspection Fees and Fines legislation. We have been grappling with the problem as regards to rental units for some time. Hence, passage of this legislation will aid the county's ability to enforce safe and proper maintenance of rental dwellings. Further, the legislation authorizes the county the ability to require rental property owners to register with the county in order to offer a lease, to charge the property owner a registration fee, and conduct inspections of a dwelling unit that is registered. And lastly, to impose a fine on a property owner that leases or is in violation of that inspection criteria established by the county. There are two amendments, but they are clarifying amendments with the intent of the county. The Charles County Delegation supports this legislation, as does the Charles County Board of Commissioners. We asked for a favorable report. Again, this is something we have sought for a number of years. And again, we have, I believe, testimony from Commission President Reuben Collins. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Reuben Collins, welcome to the committee. You have 2 minutes.
Yes, sir, and thank you for this opportunity, Mr. Chair and Vice Chair and members of the Environment and Transportation Committee. The purpose of this written testimony is to express support for HB 1061, fees and fines with existing amendments. This bill will enable the commissioners of Charles County to establish a registration and inspection program for residential dwelling units offered for rent. With the passage of this bill, and should the commissioners pass a local law, rental units may be subject to a fee for registration with the county and an inspection to ensure the condition of residential rental properties is proper for human habitation. Charles County has documented an increase in citizen complaints related to unsafe living conditions in tenant-occupied residencies. These complaints include, but are not limited to, faulty electrical work, broken plumbing, missing smoke alarms, and makeshift bedrooms without proper egress. While all of these items are clearly violations of existing minimum livability standards within the Maryland Code, the county does not have a mechanism to identify rental units and ensure that they are.
Mr. Collins, do you have something on in the background there? Because there's some noise in the background.
Can you hear me now? Do you want me to start over again?
No. You just continue, please.
Okay. I was mentioning, clear potential violations that do not reach code, but the county doesn't have a mechanism to actually enforce that. And so that's why this bill is very important to us. Our current process is reactive rather than proactive. A registration program would allow the county to ensure residential tenants are safe and that all substandard housing would be brought to light and brought into compliance. We are particularly concerned for our low-income residents, those in fixed income, as well as our elderly residents who may suffer with unsafe living conditions and do not file complaints for fear of rent increases or retribution from landlords. Conversely, we believe the registration program will also—
If you could begin to summarize your testimony, the committee would appreciate that.
which hopefully I've made it very clear, Mr. Chair. At the end of the day, this is nothing new. A significant number of jurisdictions throughout the nation have these actual registration programs. We're only asking for enabling legislation to give the county an opportunity to address this. And thank you very much for your time.
All right, thank you, sir. Any questions? Delegate Clark. And then Ciliberti in that order. Jerry, you need to unmute yourself.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner Collins, it's good to see you.
Yes, sir. Good seeing you.
Good to see you. Just one question. Is this for multifamily housing and single family units, or is it just one or the other?
It's the scope of it would include both, because at the end of the day, the county doesn't have a large stock of multi rental properties. You know, most of our rentals are actually, you know, rentals of individual housing units. And that's where the problem exists. Because we want to deal with the habitability of those that are putting themselves out there as renting their properties.
Okay, so basically you would think it would probably engulf both of them.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Delegate Ciliberti.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A quick question. When the property goes vacant, prior to a new tenant moving in, does not the county go in to inspect that property in terms of peeling paint and whatever?
We don't really have a mechanism in place, you know, and that's what we have is external options. Okay, if there's on the outside of a property, you know, we have, you know, clearly established law to address, you know, any conditions that are external in scope. But we don't have anything in place if there's internal possible housing violation, you know, without a mechanism to have the county actually look at the habitability of that property.
Okay, bye.
So it could be in total disrepair inside, and the county wouldn't know anything about it.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Any further questions for the sponsor, or the presenter, or the witness? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much. No one has signed up to testify against, although the Maryland Building Industry Association has written testimony against. So that will conclude the public hearing on House Bill 1061. Thank you very much. Let's go now to House Bill 1163, the Caroline County delegation, and I have no idea who's presenting that to us.
Mr. Chairman, it's Delegate Grice. How are you?
Oh, okay. I'm doing great. How are you
Good.
doing?
Yeah, I'm the chair of the Caroline County delegation. I'm here to present House Bill 1163. And I believe this bill does exactly the same thing that a bill you all heard earlier today for Somerset County. It just moves Caroline from in section 10-410 from 4 and 5 into 1. So it'll join Carroll and Dorchester County. It just expands the season for hunting deer, mainly for two reasons. One is crop damage, you know, for our hunters. And then the second is it's going to present more opportunities for hunters as well. As we all know, folks are working often 2 or 3 jobs, and during the week, and then even on Saturdays, they just don't have an opportunity to get out into the field. So so this will present additional opportunities for them as well. Just ask for a report.
So this is Sunday hunting. Is it on private land, public land? What is?
It would expand their opportunities on private land. It's certainly not our intent to expand opportunities on public land, mainly because in Caroline we have Tuckahoe State Park and Ottawa Wildlife Management Area. And those two places are very well used for riding horses. And we want to make sure that there's no conflict there.
Okay. Thank you very much. Any questions for the chair of the Caroline County? How many members are there of the Caroline County delegation?
We have 5 delegates and 2 senators.
Okay, I am surprised and educated.
And Delegate Jacobs is one of our members, so he's one of.
Oh, that's it. Move unfavorable. Okay, any questions for Delegate Greist? Seeing none, thank you very much. Have a nice afternoon. That ends at 11:63. Let's go to House Bill 1285, and I'm going to hazard a guess that Delegate Terraza is going to present to us.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I am going to present to you. Good afternoon, Chairman Barve, Vice Chairman Stein, and esteemed members of the Environment and Transportation Committee. On behalf of the Howard County delegation, thank you for this opportunity to present House Bill 1285, Howard County Fee for Rental Housing Services Established. For the record, I'm Delegate Jen Terraza. The delegation's letter of support for the local bill has been submitted to the committee as part of the official testimony. As this committee is aware, the COVID-19 pandemic has exacerbated existing problems and inequities with the current landlord-tenant system. You probably also know that nationwide, approximately 90% of landlords have legal representation in court, while only 10% of tenants do. And without legal counsel, the majority of tenants lose their case and are ultimately evicted. Note that even though the cases are filed as failure to pay rent, renters often have legitimate rights and defenses to those cases and that they don't know about or are not able to adequately raise without counsel. For example, in one jurisdiction, a survey found that while 80% of respondents had those legitimate defenses to their cases, only 8% of renters without counsel were able to successfully raise that defense. So keep in mind that this is not a bill about providing an attorney to tenants to help them get out of their obligations, but about making sure they know their rights and are able to present them in court. So what 1285 does is establish a fee of $30 on most rental housing licenses issued in Howard County. Note there's the slightly lower fee, for moderate income housing units, in order to do 2 things: fund educational services for any tenant or landlord in need of assistance, and fund legal services for any tenant with household income of up to 60% of median household income in Howard County. The fee must be used to provide these services, and an annual report is required by the county executive to the delegation regarding how much was collected, how much of the funds were spent, and what services were provided. I know there's some people asking that we wait for House Bill 18 rather than pass this local bill, but there's a couple differences. One, I don't think that House Bill 18 in its current stance has failure to pay rent still covered. Also, of course, we don't know whether that bill will pass, and I'm not sure what the income eligibility will be, but I feel pretty certain that ours will cover more people. And also this creates a local funding source. I respectfully urge a favorable report on this local legislation. Thank you.
Okay, any questions for Delegate Terraza? Delegate Weigel.
So the vote amongst your delegation, was it unanimous?
It was not.
Could you tell us what that vote was?
I don't, it's on the floor system. I can pull up the floor system, but I don't have it in front of me. I think.
I didn't see it there.
It should be attached. Oh, it's not attached? I thought it was in the.
Well, it would be attached to the letter that it should be attached to the letter that your delegation.
Yeah.
It just says oral testimony.
No. If you move down in it, there's one senator voted against it. And so that's two. So we have 3 senators. So that was 2-1 of the senators. And we have 9 delegates. And so that was 6-3.
Thank you. I see it. All right, thanks.
Delegate Terraza, typically we pass local bills that don't have a statewide impact upon the law, and landlord tenant tends to skirt that Ed closely. And so basically, does your bill, does the Howard County bill, what does it do with respect to failure to pay rent cases?
Well, this only applies to failure to pay rent cases.
Oh, so the $30 fee will be, what will it be used for again?
It will be used to educate landlords and tenants, because the feeling is that it would be helpful to have both educated, and then for representation for tenants. And this is only obviously within Howard County.
Okay. Any other questions for, yes, Delegate Clark?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Delegate Terrazas, what about the local government? I don't see anything in the comments or anything from Howard County government.
Yeah, that is a great question. And I apologize ahead of time for not keeping them informed about when the hearing was. We worked directly with them, with the county executive on this.
Okay, thank you.
Delegate Jalisi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So my question is, this $30 that's going to be charged would be in addition to the regular fees for the failure to pay rent?
No, this isn't, I'm sorry, to be clear, this is a charge for all rental units. Well, most rental units, because it's half for moderate income housing units. So this is just on the, this is not on failure to pay cases. This is on all rental units. And it's in addition to the current charge. So it's 30, and it's 30. So that's $30 every 2 years, because that's when you pay for rental license in Howard County.
Thank you very much.
So it's essentially $15 a year.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Delegate Healy. Ann?
I have to unmute. I didn't know that I'd stop video as well.
Oh my.
There you go.
I didn't even realize that happened.
Oh, well.
Now I'm a little here. My question is, does this bill conflict with the statewide bill that is before the legislature this year? Are there any conflicts in what you're trying to do here, so that we don't have an mix up?
Sorry, I didn't. Thank you for that question. I don't believe so. I don't see how it would conflict. This is a source of funding, and then also it only applies to failure to pay rent and creates a program to represent people. So I think if we had both, if we were fortunate enough to have both, it would just fit right in nicely with that program. However, I believe that the current stance of HB, I think it's HB 18, is that they're not covering failure to pay cases. I think they're only covering non-failure to pay cases.
I see. Okay.
So this would sort of be an addition.
All right, thank you.
Delegate Terraza, could you give me an example of a scenario where a person is being hauled into court by a landlord for failure to pay rent, where in fact it's not failure to pay rent? I'm just curious because, you know, if let's say I'm a bad tenant and I have a loud, vicious dog, or I play music too loud, but I pay my rent on time, you know, I'm not going to be called into court for failure to pay rent, even though I'm a lousy tenant. So I'm just not understanding the scenario.
I'm sorry. Can you, so your question is, which ones would HB 18 cover, or which one?
No, your bill.
So what would be some of the defenses, do you mean?
No, I mean, you said in your testimony that instances of evictions for failure to pay rent aren't really instances of evictions to pay rent. And so I'm just
right. So they're defenses
to that scenario.
Yeah, thank you for that question. So basically what happened is you go to court and there are actually reasons that maybe it's not a legitimate case. There are defenses. So for example, there's an accounting error, or there's a retaliation going on, or there's a lack of licensing, or in Baltimore City, lead paint, lack of lead paint compliance, or they're seeking non-rent charges that they're not allowed to be seeking, or the property's in severe disrepair and it's a threat to life, health, and safety, and you've actually escrowed the money as a tenant. Those are just some of the potential defenses that a tenant might not know about, but could raise and would be more apt to be successful if they had an attorney.
Well, but in the case of an escrow, let's say there's a big hole in my ceiling and I don't want to pay I don't pay the rent. I get called into court and I come to court with a, certified check for the rent, and I walk up to the judge and say, there's a hole in my ceiling. I want you to put the rent in escrow. That's a case of a failure. I guess I'm just not understanding where there would be a scenario where a person is called into court for failure to pay rent, where it's not in fact a failure to pay rent. I'm having difficulty understanding what those scenarios would be, because for me, like if I'm a terrible tenant, I am a tenant, I'm not a terrible one, but if I were a terrible tenant, but I paid my rent on time every month, they may try to evict me for having music or smoking or doing other bad things.
Oh.
It won't be for failure to pay rent.
I'm sorry, I may have misspoken. Maybe I've confused the matter. I didn't mean that. I meant they're dragged into court for failure to pay rent, but there's actually legitimate defense. If I confused the matter, I apologize. Really what I was saying is that they're brought into court for failure to pay rent, but there's actually a legitimate defense to that.
Like escrow?
Right. I have a list of some of the defenses so lack of licensing or lead paint, illegal or excessive fees, seeking non-rent charges, accounting error. I mean, maybe there's a dispute about whether it was actually paid and the tenant has some forms of proof that they have paid, but they just don't know how to raise that as a defense once they get there. Or there's,
okay.
Yeah. So
okay.
I apologize if I misspoke about that.
Okay. All right. I was a little confused.
Yeah, sorry.
Any other questions for Delegate Terraza? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to Aaron Greenfield, who has signed up in opposition.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Here on behalf. Can you hear me, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Go ahead.
My apologies. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Aaron Greenfield here on behalf of MMHA in opposition to House Bill 1285. Our members manage 93 apartment communities and over 22,300 units in Howard County. We support the goal of ensuring residents facing eviction have a right to counsel. In fact, the General Assembly, as has been noted, is considering statewide legislation in House Bill 18, which received a favorable report with amendments from the Judiciary Committee. As MMHA has explained to this committee on several occasions, some of our members are experiencing a 33% rent delinquency. Howard County already provides education to tenants and landlords through their Office of Consumer Protection. Also, Howard County already imposes a biannual license fee of $93.50 per unit. Adding an additional fee when the legislature is considering other significant increases in the failure to pay rent surcharges in light of House Bill 31 and House Bill 729 leaves the industry hard pressed to support this legislation. By way of example, for an average apartment community of 243 units, this bill will increase costs $3,600 annually, a cost that will ultimately be borne by the resident. For these reasons, we respectfully request an unfavorable report.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Greenfield? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much. That ends the public hearing on House Bill 1285. Let's proceed to House Bill 1293. Delegate Ampry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Quick question. Am I actually the last person going because
yes,
I am the last bill?
Yes.
I have a different bill as last, so I just wanted to verify. So the mayor's office will be testifying in support of this bill, but they are currently testifying on the cross-filed version in the Senate right at this moment. So
oh, you're kidding.
Hey, it's, we're so synced here in the 40th district that we know how to make this happen in a way that actually harms us a little bit. I don't know. But I can get going and hopefully.
Yeah, tell us what the bill does.
Soon. So thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, Delegate Marlon Ampry here and testifying in support of House Bill 1293, which has been cross-filed to Senate Bill 783 with my colleague, Senator Antonio Hayes. House Bill 1293 is being introduced to support the development and approval of an extensive network of neighborhood revitalization projects in the West North Avenue corridor in West Baltimore via a centralized body, which would be the West North Avenue Development Authority. The focus of this authority would be to work towards redeveloping this region of Baltimore that is in desperate need of economic development, but also has a lot of opportunity that is not being touched at the moment. And I think that this bill will really work towards ensuring that as development comes, it'll be as equitable as possible. The 5 priority areas for this authority will be to focus on the residents, focus on improving housing opportunities, focus on the economic development in the region, focus on the transportation hubs that are currently there and building out upon those, and also just focusing on building better and stronger neighborhoods. The authority membership will reflect a diverse range of stakeholders in the development effort, but there'll be primarily a focus, a focus on 2 major anchors that are in the region, which is the Maryland Institute College of Art, MICA, and Coppin State University, one of our HBCUs located right there in the region. West North Avenue in its current state represents unrealized economic potential for the Penn North neighborhood, and its revitalization will help address some of the endemic issues, crime, homelessness, economic stagnation that continue to plague this area. The implementation of the governing administrative bodies to coordinate and support the various development projects targeting each of the priorities will maximize the effectiveness of these projects and ensure there is an equitable distribution of resources and opportunity in the region. So the target area, as currently originally drafted, will include 600 block west of North Avenue through the 3200 block of West North Avenue with additional buffer areas, but we have amended this to allow for there to be more flexibility in these zoned areas with the amendment that you should have received earlier. And also, as in one of our amendments, we've also removed the Department of Commerce as one of the bodies that will be involved because we feel as though the Development Authority's work will be outside of the scope of the Department of Commerce, so it makes more sense for them not to be involved. And just to speak from the heart for a moment, I'm a 3rd generation resident of the 40th district and of this region of Baltimore. And the reason I'm a 3rd generation is because it was a first. And my grandparents moved to this region of Baltimore back in the 30s and 40s. And it was a bustling area for African-American middle class. There were businesses, there were Black businesses, Black hotels, Black banks. It was a bustling corridor of opportunity and success. And fast forward to 2015, it became a national spotlight for reform. And I think that we've done a great job in this legislature of putting forth solid police reform after the Freddie Gray uprising. But I think that one thing that the Freddie Gray uprising noted and showed us is that outside of the issues that we have with policing in our country, we also have an issue of economic development not being made equitable for everyone. And I think what this bill will do is it will allow us to think about how we can ensure that the story of Freddie Gray's life, not before he unfortunately passed away, but the life of so many people that live in that region is improved. And I think about, like, my father was born in Sandtown, where Freddie Gray was from, and actually was born in a car because the nearest hospital wouldn't admit my family because they were Black. And you think about all these hurdles that were available, that were there, and it's important that we think about ways in which we can fix these areas that were harmed due to previous policies. And I think this bill will do just that. And it will ensure that as we redevelop the region, that it's thought about in a way that is equitable and fair for the residents that are there. And we can really make this area a spotlight for what reform can be for economic development. And I ask for a favorable report on the bill.
Okay, well, I don't see Natasha Mayhew. Is Adina Britt with us, or are they both over in the Senate right now? I guess they're both over in the Senate right now. That's a shame. Anyway, any questions for the sponsor of the bill, Delegate Ampray? No. Okay.
Oh, can I add one?
What?
Mr. Chair?
Wait. What?
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I just want to add one thing that this was.
Oh, go ahead.
We had a full support of the Baltimore City delegation on this bill. It was unanimous for those present that voted in support of this bill. So
okay,
make sure that was clear.
Okay, yeah. Okay, I don't see any questions, so that ends the public hearing on House Bill 1293. That ends the public hearings for today. Trish, when we schedule is the voting session for right now? Is there any subcommittees that have to meet before the voting session? I can't remember.
I think we're going right into voting, but it's going to have to be a separate Zoom link. So everyone's going to have
Okay.
to log out and log right back in.
Okay, so that's what we'll do then. See you soon via a different Zoom link.